What is going on, guys, and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about a few of the alternatives to Photoshop. As you probably know by now, if you've done landscape photography for very long, Photoshop and Lightroom are pretty much the golden standard in terms of editing software. And there's a few other programs out there that are kind of competitors, but nothing that's been able to take down the behemoth of Adobe yet. However, I've tested out tons of different programs. It seems like all of the different ones that are available, and I haven't really found anything I liked until just recently. And actually, I found a software that I think is very competitive with Lightroom and Photoshop. It's able to do almost anything that you could do in Photoshop. It's easily organizable, and I just really enjoy the software, and so I'm super stoked to share it with you guys. I want to be really straightforward and let you guys know that I am not being paid to create this video for the company. However, I did receive their software for free. They sent it to me to try out. And I will be leaving an affiliate link at the bottom, so if you do purchase the software, please use my link. But otherwise, I'm not getting paid to create this video, so there's really no incentive for me other than I just want to share with you guys and show you guys this great software. So the software is the On1 Photo RAW 2020, and On1 makes a really great program. One of the best things about On1 that I really like is the fact that it's designed just for landscape photographers, portrait photographers, food photographers, photographers in general. Really just any kind of photographer is what On1 is designed for. Photoshop is also designed for photographers, but it's designed for people that want to make GIFs, people that do video. It's designed for tons of other things. So when you open Photoshop, you're going to see tons of other tools that you don't need. You're going to get confused, and it's just not super simple to use. Whereas On1 does make things very simple to use. It's so easy a beginner could do it. I didn't have any problem figuring things out, and I've even talked to a few of my clients that come to my workshops, and they have loved the software as well. So another one of the great benefits of On1 is that once you buy the software, you own it for life. And so the software runs, I believe it's $50 on the sale price or $100 full price. So depending on when you buy it will depend on the cost, but that cost is going to be your one-time cost. You don't have to pay a subscription. As you probably know, with the Adobe Creative Cloud, to get Lightroom and Photoshop, you have to pay either $10 or $20 a month, depending on how many years you've had the subscription. And then if you want the full suite of Adobe products, it's much more expensive. So the nice thing about this software is that once you buy it, you actually own it. And they're going to keep making improvements to the software for a few years before they'll get rid of it. So you don't need to keep paying monthly costs like you do with Adobe. So I've also heard that down the line, On1 is working on video editing software and other software for creatives other than photographers. And so this is something that I could see expanding in a program that I really could see kind of taking a good amount of the market share in the future. So I'm super excited to show you guys this program. I don't want to take any more time talking, so let's jump right in. I'm going to show you organizational tools. I'm going to show you other features in the program like effects and sharpening and just anything that the program offers that I think would be useful to you as a landscape photographer, or even if you're another kind of photographer, things that I think would be useful. So let's get started. So one of the first major differences you're going to see in this software is how it organizes your photos. You're able to catalog your photos similar to Lightroom, but it is a little bit different. And that's one of the reasons why I really like this On1 software. So you can see here, I just have all my photos uploaded here, and they're just on my hard drive. I haven't uploaded them into the software at all. And I'm able to click on any folder, and I can actually go in and see the photos that are in that folder. In this folder, there's just one image. But if I go back, I can select any folder I want and see all the photos that are in that folder. And the best thing is once I get home, all I have to do is upload these to my drive. I don't have to go and sit and wait for it to catalog the photos and all this and all that. You can simply just open it in On1 just when it's simply on your hard drive. And so that's really nice also, because a lot of people that I've talked to, they struggle with organizing in Lightroom. The importing function is a little janky, and it can kind of cause your photos to end up in weird places and you can't find them. So that's another reason why I like this, is because it actually forces you to upload your photos yourself to your hard drive, and I just put them in different dates. And then that allows me to just select the dates. So it's a lot easier to organize your photos, in my opinion. And of course, you can catalog your photos. They recently just added the ability for you to get some of the photos that you catalog on the mobile app, which is a great feature. So that's a really new feature that they have out that I may be doing a video on in the future. But I want to get started talking about some of the different editing techniques here. And so you can see that you can actually see a photo from each of your dates here. So I can kind of tell, because obviously if I was just seeing the numbers, I wouldn't know what I shot on May 16th, but because I can see the photos, I know that, okay, I was in the Palouse Hills. And so that's actually the photo that I want to show you guys first, how I'm going to edit. And that is in this folder. So I'll double click that. I am in the browse module here. They kind of have their modules a little bit different than Lightroom as they're on the side. Basically, the two that really you're going to use is browse and edit. Browse will let you see your photos in your hard drive, on your desktop, wherever they may be, whereas edit's going to let you edit the photo. But if you go ahead and click on whatever photo you want to edit, for me, let's go ahead and edit this one. I'm just going to double click. That's going to open it in the edit module. Now, one more thing in the browse module here. When you're in this module, you actually have the option to use these features here. And so these features are really nice because one thing that a lot of these programs that are similar to Lightroom is lacking is some of the features that Photoshop has. So some of you guys may be interested in doing focus stacks or different things like that. And so this is where you're gonna do that. They even have options for pano, for an HDR, or for a focus stack, and their auto focus stacking software is actually pretty good compared to most of the other focus stacking software that I've used. I'm not gonna cover that in this video, but I just wanna let you guys know that is there. You also have this layers here. So if you wanted to blend a few photos together, just like you would in Photoshop, you can select layers. But for purpose of this video, I'm just gonna edit this photo here and just kind of walk you through some of the different effects that they have. So you can see that they've got the same sliders as Lightroom for the most part. The effects do work in a little bit faster than they do in Lightroom, which is totally fine, but just be aware that in Lightroom, if you increase the shadows 70 points, that's going to be a lot less than in this On1 software. So usually just little tweaks are kind of what you're looking for. You also have the ability to control the midtones, which is a really nice feature. So that can help you create more contrast and whites. And usually I won't use the blacks here. You also have structure and haze, which is really similar to the dehaze as well as the clarity sliders. They're a little bit different and I actually like them a little bit better, but very, very similar. And then you've got kind of your temperature, your tint, your saturation, your vibrance all down here. I really like the way they've organized this, where they have all of the color adjustments in one box here. One of the things that I don't like about Lightroom is that you've kind of got your white balance at the top and then your saturation and vibrance is at the bottom. And so that confuses people a lot of times. So I'm just going to kind of real quickly here, just correct this image. And I'm just kind of showing you guys the features, so I'm not super concerned about creating a great image right now. I just kind of want to show you guys how it works. And I have heard that for portrait photographers that this reduced vibrance on skin works really well. That can help so that people don't look like they just got a spray tan. It'll help make their skin look a little more natural. I personally haven't used it. I don't take many portraits at all, but I've heard that is a good feature if you're interested in portrait photography. And this is also a really nice feature. It allows you to maintain the purity in the highlights or the shadows. And what that does basically, and as far as I know, there's nothing like this in Lightroom. But what this does is that it makes it so that I am removing colors out of the brightest spots of the image. So for example, in this shot, everything is pretty well exposed, but let's say that I was shooting into the sun and the sun was completely blown out white, but when I increased the saturation, the sun became more saturated. I could slide this slider to make sure that that blown out spot isn't saturated. And so that's basically what this does. It's really helpful in the shadows too. You can kind of get rid of the blue tint in the shadows with this slider pretty well. I usually don't use them too much, but they are there. They are nice to use. You've also got the details tab here. The sharpening is much simpler than it is in other programs that I've used. So you've got your threshold and your amount. You can hold Alt while you slide the threshold. And again, that's holding the Alt Option key. And this is going to show you the edges that are going to be sharpened. This photo doesn't have a lot of sharp edges, but probably about right there. And then I can just slide the amount. And it has very similar keyboard commands to Photoshop or Lightroom. Command plus is going to zoom you in. You can actually toggle this bubble here and the bubble will let you see kind of what your effect is doing. And you can see the sharpening effect is very small. I could reduce the threshold, but you kind of get the gist. They also have really nice presets here. So you can click low or high to do a noise reduction as well as a sharpen. So you can see that both the presets, they apply both noise reduction and sharpening. So the presets are super nice if you just want a quick edit. And you can also create your own presets if you're doing some batch editing. And I always leave this remove hot pixels box checked. You've also got your lens corrections. It has your lens for your camera, just like Lightroom does, nothing different there. You can also do it manually, but usually just the automatic lens correction does fine. And then if you wanted to transform your photo, you could. They have these same features in Lightroom as well. Nothing really special here, but this will allow you to kind of warp your photo, do whatever you want right here. So that's kind of the develop tab here. And that's just gonna be pretty basic, exactly kind of what you have in Lightroom. And you can actually go to local, and that's gonna be like using your adjustment brush or your gradient just like you would in Lightroom. So if I wanted to make a local adjustment here, let's say I wanted to reduce the reduce the exposure at -1 right now. Want to reduce the exposure on this bottom corner. I've got my brush here. You can change it to gradient mode, and you can just paint this on. So that's one way that you make local adjustments. It's just the same as Lightroom. There's really nothing too special about that either. But the one thing that I do find really special about this program is the effects, and that's really where I think this program is very, very, very useful. And so these effects, if you click add filter, you can see all of these effects that they already have in the program. And so all of these effects will do different things. You've got things that are just like in Photoshop. So this is kind of where the program will match what Photoshop can do. So for example, you've got curves here. You've got color adjustments, which is similar to the hue saturation. You've got all these different color filters. You can do little filters, noise reduction. You can even do little weather filters, are sometimes fun to play with. On this photo, it's not gonna work, but I'll show you guys. You can kind of create a little fake blizzard here. This could work if it was really foggy and you wanted to create more atmosphere. So there's just tons of filters. Some are a little more gimmicky, and others are actually really useful. Like I said, that weather filter, not something I generally use, but it could be cool if you're kind of into creative compositing. But we do have tons of other filters here, and some of my favorites are the sunshine, glow, dynamic contrast, and I usually use these 3 color filters. So I'll just show you guys a little example of each. You've kind of got this sunshine filter, which really helps your image glow, and you can even add more glow down here on the bottom. And you can see this is kind of similar if you've ever used what they call an Orton effect. It's really similar to kind of what that does, and that it adds a little more contrast. You can change the amount here. The really nice thing about all of these is that you actually have an opacity slider on each effect, and you can toggle the effect. So I really like doing this, and if I say, oh, I think that effect is a little strong and I want to go back later, all I have to do is slide this opacity bar down and it will reduce the effect. So that's kind of the sunshine filter, super simple, but it is one of my favorites. The other one is dynamic contrast, and this can help your scene get really crunchy. A lot of times I'll just start off on the natural preset and kind of see how that looks, and then I will just drag things around. So you can see, I'll zoom in here so we can see a little bit better. This filter really kind of sharpens the edges. If you've ever used a tonal contrast in Photoshop from the Knit collection, this is essentially the same thing, just much easier to use in my opinion. So usually I'll just add a few points on these, and I don't usually use any of the tone here, but you can see that when I toggle that, especially up here, it does add a little bit of contrast, especially in the really fine detail areas. And then the last thing that I'll use is one of these color filters. Let's use the color adjustment. So the color adjustment works just like an HSL in Lightroom. If you haven't used that in Lightroom, then it's actually much easier to use here, in my opinion. So you can select the color. For example, if I said, okay, I think that's a little yellow, let's make it a little more green. I could click on yellow, and this actually allows me to change the hue, saturation, and brightness. And one of the key differences that this has over perhaps Lightroom is that you can actually slide the range. So by sliding the range, it will allow me to select more or less yellows. And you can't see that, but you just have to know that essentially right now, this is selecting a certain yellow color. And so if I let's say if I increase the saturation, actually let's go back, let's do green. I'll be able to show you easier on green, I think. So increase the saturation on green. And you can see that doesn't really do anything because it's not selecting many greens because the image is a little yellow. I can actually slide this range to increase the amount of greens or increase the distance that it will go from green, meaning that it will select more of the yellows and more of these kind of light blues than if I had this range back at 0. So that's a really useful tool if you're finding that it's not quite selecting what you want. But you've got all these options. You've got brightness. You've got just tons of options. You can also use this eyedropper slider. So if I wanted to adjust the saturation of this exact color right here, I could click and drag to the left, and that'll automatically take that saturation down. So just some really helpful tools. And a lot of these tools that they have are nice because they're a combination of what you could get in Lightroom and what you could get in Photoshop, but all packaged into one program in a much easier to use way. They use really easy to understand language. So that's kind of one of my favorite features. So I also want to go over kind of a more advanced effects for, I know there's a lot of people out there that are doing more advanced effects, luminosity masking, other things like that, because masking is obviously a huge part of landscape photography and any other kind of photography when you want to make fine-tuned adjustments. So another one of my favorite features in this program, I'm going to show you on a curves layer. So let's say that I just wanted to target the brights. And if you've never used luminosity masks before, you may not understand this, but if you are a luminosity masks user, you're really gonna like this feature. So let's say that I just wanted to target these brights. In Photoshop, normally you'd use a luminosity masks, maybe a lights 3, a lights 2, and you usually have a panel to do that. A lot of people use the Raya Pro panel, a lot of people use the TK Actions panel. The really nice thing about this On1 software is that that all comes with the program. You have the ability to make luminosity masks without buying any additional plugin, having to install it, updating it, all that. And so the nice thing about making layer masks is that you just simply click on the layer and you can see that this white box appears. This is now my layer mask. It's completely white. And to make a luminosity mask, all I have to do is click Lumen and I can click View. And now I'm looking at the mask. So when you click Lumen, it just makes like a basic midtones mask, but now you can change the levels and basically create your own totally customizable luminosity mask. And I really love this feature because you're not restricted to a certain luminosity mask. And a lot of times in Photoshop, I'll run into the position where I feel like I'm right in between maybe a lights 3 and a lights 4, but I can't get it exactly where I want. And so this feature is great because it allows you to just select exactly what you want. You can also change the window, which changes the selection area essentially, and you can also feather the selection. So I feel like that's a pretty good selection of the highlights. So if I just want to increase that, and I can click View to go back to the image and watch the effect happen. And you can see I'm increasing just the bright spots, and I can toggle that. And of course, just like in Photoshop, you'd have the option on these masks to just create a mask here, and I could just paint with a brush. You can see my brush is up here. This is where your brush tools are. And I could just paint black with the brush. And one of the really nice things, they also use the lingo of paint out and paint in rather than Photoshop having to know that black paints out and white paints in. A lot of people struggle with that concept at first, so this is nice because you just select paint out or paint in. And you can do that right on a layer mask. So those are really great features. And I'll be honest, when I first tried this software, when I first downloaded it at least, I was kind of thinking, man, it'll be as good as Lightroom, but it'll never compare to Photoshop. But this totally blew me out of the water. I was totally wrong. And one thing that you may be asking if you're an experienced Photoshop user is, well, Photoshop has blend modes, and I actually have good news for you, that this also has blend modes. So you can click this little thing here. I don't even know what you'd call that. But you can actually go to blending options and change the mode. You can see they've got all the modes that you would have in Photoshop plus a few more. And so that's a great way. Also, if you wanted to dodge and burn, that would be a good way to do that, is just by changing the blend mode on a new layer, doing it on a local layer. You could create another adjustment. And so the last feature I want to show you guys here is the ability to dodge and burn. And if you use Photoshop a lot, you'll know that to dodge and burn, you have to jump through a bunch of loopholes, make special layers, special blend modes, yada, yada, yada. And it's just a huge pain. Obviously, it's worth it because dodging and burning really helps your images, but it'd be nice if it was easier. And so On1 took it upon themselves to make it very easy for you to dodge and burn. So you can actually click Add Adjustment, and then we're gonna do Paint with Color. And we're gonna select you can actually click here, double click here, to select which color you'd like to use. And I'm just gonna go with like a kind of warmish yellow in here. I can close that box. And now I'm painting with color. So essentially, this layer mask is completely black. If I inverted it, you would see, Command I here to invert the layer mask. You'd see that everything is yellow. Obviously not what we want. So they start you off with a black layer mask, and then the idea is that you're just gonna paint in the effect, and that's gonna paint this color down here. You can also change the mode from solid paint to replace color to classic. I personally haven't used classic a lot. Solid paint is really good for just general dodging and burning, whereas replace color is good if, say, you wanted to change the color of the hills or something like that. But generally, stick to solid paint, and you can lower the opacity of your brush up here to like 10%. And then we're able to just come down here, and you can see that we can paint that in. Now that paints in really fast. You can also see that it is really saturated. Let's go ahead and drop the opacity to like 3% here. There, you can see that's a lot better now. And we can kind of just paint this spot. Normally I would have a lot more precision when I'm painting, but I'm just kind of want to show you guys an example here. So you could paint wherever you want. You could paint some light coming in on the side here. And the really nice thing about this is that right now I'm saying, well, that's probably a little too saturated. I can actually go down to this color, and I can change the color and allow that to change my image. So if I change my mind and said, I actually want to paint blue light, I could go down here to blue. So it's really nice because in Photoshop, what you have to do if you want to change your color on your dodge and burn is get rid of all the dodging and burning that you did, or there's a few other workarounds, but it's not easy to change. This program makes it really easy to slightly change the color of your dodge and burn. And so for that reason, I really like it. You can also, of course, change the blend mode. A lot of people like to dodge and burn in soft light. And so you can change the blend mode to pretty much anything you want. And so lastly, this portrait tab has some portrait effects for portrait photographers. I'm not a portrait photographer. I haven't used it, so I don't have much experience, but I have heard from other peers that I've talked to that are portrait photographers that this is absolutely amazing for people that take portraits. It's going to allow you to select certain things on their face and you know, whatever a portrait photographer wants to do. So if you take family photos on the side, or maybe you shoot a few weddings on the side, this could be something that I would recommend looking into. And so you can see that you've really got the whole package here. They really left nothing out in the On1 software. I looked for hours when I first used this program trying to find something, and every time I had a question, I said, oh, how do you do this? There was always an answer. So I really honestly don't find any feature that is left unturned. And so for that reason, I really like this program. As you guys can see, On1 really left nothing out for landscape photographers. It is an absolutely amazing program. I was super impressed. Like I said, when I first downloaded the program, I thought it was just going to be the next program that I'd try once and never open again, and now it's something that I use all the time. It's a program that honestly I'd probably get rid of Photoshop completely, but being someone that teaches workshops, I always want to teach the industry standard, which at the moment is Photoshop. However, if you don't care about the industry standard and you want a program that is incredibly easy to use, super user-friendly, much cheaper, and just all around better, I would highly recommend this software. So I'm going to leave you a link right here for you to download that software. As I mentioned before, this is an affiliate link, so please use this link if you are going to purchase the program. But I'm not being paid to make this video. I honestly do think this is a great program. You're really going to like it. And of course, if you have any questions about the software, you are more than welcome to leave them in the comments and I will help you out. All right, I hope you guys have a good one and we'll see you next time.